responsible stewardship. It is about moving beyond abstract principles to practical questions. I invite all participants to be bold, honest, and constructive. Let us interrogate assumptions, surface real-world gaps, and imagine solutions that are grounded, inclusive, and implementable. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you. And I must now invite Ranjana again, and then we will begin with presentation and panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tiwari. So now we are beginning with our presentation. So as highlighted by Manish sir, that we are doing this session in partnership with Childlight, iSpread, and Space to Grow. These organizations were set up, the expert engagement group was set up by METI to recommend on AI and child safety. And they have come up with few recommendations. So I would now invite Ms. Zoe Lemberne, COO of Childlight, to present study insights and share with us the evidence from the recommendations.
Good morning, everybody. So today we're here to talk about child-centric AI, and rightly so. India places enormous value on children, not only as individuals, but as the future parents, carers, workers, leaders who will shape the nation. If AI is now the part of the fabric of modern India, then child safety must be that golden thread that's woven through every stage of a young person's life. Alongside the benefits of AI, however, does come harm. AI itself can create persuasive disinformation and give dangerous advice, and generative AI in particular is increasing the opportunity for people to abuse and exploit children. As well as offering, unfortunately, advice to offenders on how to abuse children, AI is also being used to create both real and synthetic illegal child sexual abuse material, often referred to as nudification or perhaps deepfakes. This use of AI is unfortunately growing, and in 2024 we calculated over 300 million children around the world were victims of some form of technology-facilitated abuse or exploitation. And in fact, even in the last year, we've seen a 1,325% increase in AI-generated sexual abuse material. But this is unfortunately also well understood by children and young people themselves, who see that tension between benefit and risk, opportunity and safety. A Childlight poll of 410 young people across India brings this to life, and I'll bring a few data points to show. We ask questions about their online activity, their use of AI, and opinions on risk and benefits. So young people in India see AI as powerful and beneficial, but not safe by default, as shown by a clear majority who see AI as both good and harmful, rather than just purely positive or purely negative. Back to that tension. And perhaps this reflects a nuanced and realistic understanding of the technology itself that's being used. And while many young people describe online life as enjoyable and helpful, only 1 in 4 say it feels safe. Young women, in particular, are notably more likely than young men to describe online spaces as unsafe, stressful, and mixed, and less likely to say they feel safe online at all. This gender gap perhaps signals heightened exposure to risk, harassment, and image-based abuse online. But who is responsible for safe AI? Nearly half of our respondents, so 48%, place their primary responsibility for online safety on technology companies, followed by parents and carers and national government. And in fact, law enforcement and schools also feature as quite responsible, particularly amongst young women. There's overwhelming support for requiring platforms to automatically detect and remove harmful content using AI and legally report suspected AI-generated child sexual abuse images. However, interestingly, the majority of young people we survey do actually have confidence in AI safety. And for us, perhaps that points to perhaps the distinction between AI technology itself, not inherently harmful, but rather how it is then used by people. So safety cannot just stop at product design and safety by design. It must continue through monitoring, rapid response, child helplines, and compensation for survivors, because something will go wrong. When a child experiences sexual exploitation and abuse, or abuse facilitated or supported by AI, the impact unfortunately does not end in childhood. The effects of that abuse can shape mental health, relationships, parenting, and economic participation for decades after that. So if that whole system, and I suspect many of you in this room represent different parts of that system, if that golden thread frays, if fabrics, communities, nations weaken, protecting children in AI shouldn't just be seen as simply a child protection or safety by design issue, perhaps a mantra that everybody will have heard over the last few days and to come. But rather this should be, perhaps if we go back to the mantra of the AI Impact Summit overall, one where we're promoting welfare for all and happiness of all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Zoe. I would also like to welcome Dr. Charu Malhotra. She recently joined us at the panel discussion. She is Associate Professor at She is Senior Professor from Indian Institute for Public Administration, New Delhi. Now I would request, just a second. Now I would request Mr. Gaurav Agarwal from iSprit Foundation and Ms. Chitra Iyer from Space to Grow to present expert group recommendations in front of us.
Thanks, Ranjana, and thanks, IGPP, for having us here. So I'll just briefly describe the sort of, what we did as an engagement group, and then I'll pass it on to Chitra to share the recommendations we have for the ministry. So we all know, Zoe has done a great job in explaining how important the problem is. So by the way, I'm Gaurav. I'm here in the capacity of as a volunteer from iSpirit, chairing this session engagement group on child safety on behalf of METI. So I'll just tell you, the purpose of this engagement group was to, have a participative discussion with all, participants in this important topic, from not forgetting the kids who we are talking about, not forgetting the parents who care about their kids, in addition to the authorities and groups who care about child safety. So 3-4 things, dimensions what have come out, and in detail, Chitra will mention the recommendations that we are making. First of all, we should probably change the name from child safety to child well-being. Right? I mean, safety is very, patriarchal term in some sense, who are we to, they are younger ones, but still well-being is a better thing, because especially in this world of AI, I think there are a lot of things that are beneficial to them, especially, kids living in villages who don't have access to good teachers. I think they can read anything these days. So as long as they are reading the right thing, right? And they are being exposed to the right things, but it is a double-edged sword. So we should worry about child well-being and not safety, I think. Second is, we should not leave out parents and community in general. I was having a chat with Chitra this morning, it will be recorded, but let me say, even at this age, my father doesn't know that I'm a social drinker. I hope he doesn't see it. But it's okay. He's 82. He'll forgive me now. But there are families where, parents are much more okay with, you become 18 and you do it. So who is right? There's nothing right or wrong. So how can government or a civil society decide what is right? So not having parents in the discussion, a solution that we create where individual parents don't have a say in what is right for their kids, I don't think it stands in a society like ours and globally in general. I think parents have a decision to make what time you go to sleep, whether you drink milk at the night or not, then they should have a say in what is being exposed to you in a digital AI world. The third is, in India, the legal system, we know how it is. So anything we do in iSpirit, actually we try to create a techno-legal framework for everything. The reason is it should be, as you say, privacy by design. Should be well-being. I'm deliberately not using the term safety. Well-being by design. It should not be left to companies or systems to adhere to a regulation, but rather there should be technical systems. UPI is one example. For all of us use it. You don't know how it works, but typically it just gets the thing done. It gets the money transferred in a safe way. Similarly, systems should be safe by design. People don't, or companies don't need to worry about them. They don't have to go out of their way to adhere to the system. Last but not the least, we have to make sure that we all come together in this very important topic. Why India is so important? We produce more children than any other country in the world. So I think other countries can probably ignore this important topic, but we cannot. With this, I will invite Chitra to have her official recommendations above and beyond what I just mentioned. Thank you, Chitra.
Hi, thank you so much, Gaurav, for that. I just thought it would be great to just speak about the process as well as to how we really went about this. Basically, iSpirit is the chair with Mighty, and Space to Grow and Childlight were set up as knowledge partners for AI and child safety. I think it's a big win that, we have at an impact summit such as this, a child safety as a track to really look at AI and children. The expert engagement group brought in a lot of stakeholders across the country, and we also worked with lawyers, judiciary, law enforcement. We prepared the first draft, gotten inputs from various stakeholders, and also set up a pre-summit event on the 27th where we again got technology companies and industries to put in their inputs. And finally, the recommendations were sent to Mighty. And I'm glad to say that there's a specific working group on AI and child safety where the team is actually looking at this recommendation. And with this recommendation, they would be actually announcing the declaration for how India wants to stand on AI and child safety and how we become the narrative for the global south as well. So that's the overall process we took. The techno-legal architecture, Gaurav pretty clearly explained. I'll just jump on to some of the key recommendations, and I know the panel will also deliberate on this. One thing was, can we have a child safety solutions observatory? I've been working in the development sector for almost 20 years, and I always feel that can there be a collective theory of change? Why do we all have different theories of change, and then every funder is funding a theory of change? So I think this collective safety solution observatory is more about really bringing in all the innovations and best practices into like one place where we are able to put in all the effort of what we have done as a country, but at the same time, we are able to become the narrative for the global south as well. And like, Gaurav just mentioned, if we have the strength of children and also the children who are accessing internet in India are far more than any country, we have solutions right here. So can we really make that happen? So it's more about aggregation. The second is Global South Working Group, and I know that there is a Global South network that is being launched, and the Mighty is actually working on that. The third is a child safety innovation sandbox. We were thinking that, what we could do is finishing of the summit, and in Q2, if we can announce a basic innovation challenge to look at how do you really combat digital harms and AI harms for children and really bring about innovations through innovation sandbox. Nothing about children without children, and I think it's important that Youth Safety Advisory Council is set up. And this is not like a tick in the box of saying that, okay, let's just get youth and let them talk and, just do a tick mark. It's not about that, like really having that conversation. So I just want to say in one of the researches that we recently did, one of the girls in Bangalore said, I would rather speak to a AI chatbot and not even to my peer and my parents, because either I'll be trolled or judged. Now AI is making that space, and if we don't have the voices of the children and youth on what this means to them in terms of, say, a well-being or in terms of harm, we won't be able to really work on really designing policies. So I think that's another area that we thought we need to really have. Finally, strengthen legal framework to address AI-generated child abuse material, and I think Napinai ma'am is here, so I don't even want to open my mouth on this. But all I want to highlight is how do we really demystify all the acts that we have, but at the same time we are able to have something absolutely clear when it comes to criminalization of CSAM, whether it is synthetically generated or it is actually generated by an individual. So really bringing that together. And tech companies and the proof of burden on any kind of harm that is happening has to be on the industry. And how do we really build in impact assessments of really high interaction AI systems? It's critical that we have that, because today we always talk about having an ISO certified thing. Can we have an ISO for safety on any kind of AI impact system that is actually working for children? Finally, bringing back to what Gaurav was saying about parents and guardians, investing in digital resilience and AI literacy, as a preventive infrastructure. There is Cyber Olympiad and artificial intelligence book in every school, which talks nothing about safety, and it doesn't talk about well-being either. So I think, how do you really work on curriculum and build that capacity of children and parents to be able to guardrail and navigate the AI space more safely and strategically? So that's all in terms of the thing. And I just want to close by saying, recently I've been actually in some other context talking to a lot of doctors and meeting a lot of doctors, and they kept saying that today when children come to us,
Just introduce the panel. So we have Miss N.S. Napinai. She's senior advocate from Supreme Court of India and also the founder of Cyber Sathi. We have Miss Maya Sharman. She is STNI attaché, Embassy of Israel in India. Miss Uttara Ganesh. She is APEC Head of Public Policy, Snapchat. Mr. Atish Gonsalves, Head of Product, Computer Science and AI Product Experience, Lego Education. We also have with us Mr. Akash Pagalia. He is Chief Digital Officer, CDO, TP. Mr. Ashish Jaiman, co-founder of Needle Labs. He's the one who is moderating the session. We also have Professor Charu Malhotra with us, and I have already introduced her. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjana. And amazing panel. I'm going to write into this. So let's not waste time introducing ourselves, right? We'll just jump into it. So I'll just kick it off by Gaurav. Good presentation. So I'm going to start changing my child safety to child well-being. But the interesting thing is, our focus is child well-being. And I personally think that, we have to build, we love children in the playgrounds and slides, so we also have to start thinking about how do we actually add the right kind of fences around the playground. So that's what my focus will be. And one of the other things is digital upbringing. How do we actually concertedly, all of us together, think about how do we raise the next generation in a AI first environment, right? For them, it's an AI first. For me, it wasn't even computer first, right? So now I've graduated to at least I understand that. So with that, I'm going to just kick it off. So without introduction, and the amazing thing that we have is the way I have structured is we have builders, right? We have Snap and we have Lego, right? We have guardians and policies, Uttara, Ms. Charu and Advocate Napinai. And then we also have an implementer, right? So we'll actually, my questions would be around those themes. So I'm going to start with builders, because they are the ones who always get the other side of the stick all the time, right? So I'm going to start with them because they at least should start talking about, and I have my things that I have to sort now. So maybe I'll go with Uttara, you first, right? So how do you start thinking about well-being by design for your key demographic in India, which is you shared from 13 to 30 or 35?
First of all, thank you so much for that question, Ashish. Appreciate it. The first thing I'll say is that at Snap, our fundamental start point on product is that the design of the product or the architecture of the product has a far more powerful effect on the experience of the user than anything that we can do afterward, right? So design is crucial from that perspective. And let me open by, and I don't imagine a lot of you are Snapchat users, so I'm just going to open by saying, what is Snapchat's social purpose or social function, right? I know we all think about social media as this one, monolithic category, but it is not. You might think, if you think about all the apps you use, Reddit is different from LinkedIn, is different from Instagram, is different from Snapchat, right? Some platforms are town squares that enable a sort of viral sharing of information, and some platforms are one-to-one communication enabling. Now, the fact is that Snapchat is primarily a one-to-one messaging app. That, in a sense, because our social function is not so much about being a town square where people perform for others for likes and that sort of thing, it sort of minimizes the types of interactions young people typically experience. Now, beyond that as well, right, I think there's a number of different things that design can do as opposed to a post-facto content moderation approach. For instance, minimizing contacts from strangers. That can do simple things like ensuring that people that are on the app need to have bidirectional acceptance of friendship before they communicate can be powerful because it means that it's effectively a closed interface for communication. Number two, privacy settings that say, hey, your location is turned off by default. Such that the young user does not have a cognitive load to make a difficult decision to find the privacy setting and then change it, right? Just having it turned off by default is a useful thing to do for young people. And the third thing I'll say is this, right? This idea of disappearing messages. Now, real-life interaction is often ephemeral. This conversation is not, being like the words are not in the ether. They're just sort of ephemeral. We've tried to recreate that in the chat feature, but also then, for instance, give users the control to ensure that they can turn that feature off, for instance. We also have something called Family Center, where parents can have, again, right, a modicum of visibility into their young person's interactions on the internet and online without necessarily compromising the young person's privacy, right? So we try to be thoughtful about balancing safety and privacy. We try to, I'm sure we often don't get it right. We think about this as iterative, and we think about this as design first. It's a number of, we're constantly introducing new features every year, sometimes every other quarter even, to make sure that the way we think about safety in a AI risk landscape, where the risks also are growing very fast, we're moving quickly to address those as well.
Of course. So one of the things that I've always talked about is any innovation is typically in the early stages are used by two sets of people, right? One is academics and the others are adversarial actors, right? So AI is in that phase right now. But that brings me to Atish and at Lego. Uttara talked about transparency, but parents have oversights. You have an amazing platform for kids, actually, where they can be creative. So how do you make sure that those right kind of transparency levers are built into the product and parents or educators have the right oversight?
Firstly, thanks for having me. And so I work with Lego Education, which is part of the Lego Group. And for those of you who know Lego, very much values its brand. It's a very respected company for the last almost 100 years now. So with education, our focus is very much on AI literacy and computer science literacy for kids. And our perspective is AI is everywhere, but it's not inevitable. So I think I'll be provocative here and say just because it's out there, it doesn't have to be it doesn't mean that all the kids have to be using it as well. So our view is empowered, that kids should be empowered creators of AI versus passive consumers. AI shouldn't be seen as magic. It's not a friend, it's a tool. Our approach to building is give kids a screwdriver, help them break apart this glass box or black box, whatever, and help kids to build the future of AI themselves rather than using it. We need to really look at the foundational principles of what AI really is. And help kids we should help educators and kids to elevate AI literacy as with other literacies we have today, and really support educators. I think it's not a lack of tools, it's a lack of competence for educators, and make sure that they are really supported. I like the conversation around well-being and just maybe getting a bit more specific around that. So safety, we do not generate text or media, so we don't. Currently, at least with generative AI, we feel generative AI can be made safer, not safe. So we just don't go there. We do not anthropomorphize AI, which is a fancy way of saying we don't get kids to think AI is a human being, not leading to unhealthy emotional bonds. We want AI to be transparent, so we only use models where kids are using pre-trained. So we use things like pre-trained classifiers to teach kids about it, but those models should have very transparent model cards. Where have those models been trained? What's the geographic diversity of people who've been trained on those? So very clear data provenance. Respect privacy, so nothing. So I was speaking to a colleague here in front, he was like, so which tool platforms do you connect with? Nothing leaves the kid's computer device. Everything is done locally. Nothing ever leaves. There's no login information. Nothing goes to the cloud, to third parties or to us. So I think these are some of those very basic sort of foundations. I don't think these are things we should fight for. These are things that should be a given. I think child safety and well-being should be a non-negotiable.
I absolutely agree. And one of the things is the information does not leave the device where the child is playing or creating, which is amazing. But, harms happen, right? And I'm going to bring in our guardrails people. Advocate Napanai, this is for you. So let's say the best of abilities of both Snap and Lego, but the kid or children get harmed for whatever reasons. So the two-part question. One is, how is the Indian law being future-proof and thinking about the potential harms? But more importantly, where does the buck stop if that happens?
Is there a buck?
I don't know, because it's so interesting thing. So buck is a very interesting word. Gaurav talked about, and then I think Chitra was also talking about UPI. You know why those work? Because nothing moves like buck moves, right? Everyone pays attention, things would work. Can we make child well-being as important as the green buck?
Well, the flip side of that is the speedier your chance of moving your money, the faster you lose it too. So, I love Gaurav's opening too, where he changed the narrative from safety to well-being. I want to take it a little bit further on that and speak about what you look at from the perspective of law. And your opening statement also talked about how you have the makers, the builders, and God forbid if the guardrails there fail, then how does law come in? I would actually ask you to take a step back and remember that the guardrails are placed by law even for the builders to follow as a preventive and protective measure and not just as a punitive measure. That's how law is expected to work, and that's how law has been evolving over the last few years. So when we talk about be it safety, be it well-being, or be it, I would say, just existing in a digital domain with the assurance of ease of existence, or with the assurance of, let's use the word, there's no harm in saying safety, or a safe space rather, right? When we approach it from the perspective of law, how do we look at it? As I just mentioned, Now your narrative moves to preventive and protective measures, and therefore you have regulatory mechanisms coming in. You had recently the intermediary guidelines modified to include AI-related synthetically generated imagery, information, right? SGI. And that whole purpose of that regulation is preventive and protective. And to place the accountability or burden on the platforms, on builders, on people who are offering products or services. There it's predominantly services because it's for intermediaries. So when we speak about preventive and protective measures, there is a lot beyond what meets the obvious too. Who decides what is essential in terms of preventive and protective? Where do you place the guardrails in terms of to what extent should law step in to provide those preventive and protective measures? And when and how should it be left to technology to evolve at its own pace? And I love to give this example always when it comes to law. Every technology person will say that law is an impediment. But it is not meant to be so. The example I give is, you grow, you evolve, you reach a tipping point where if law enables, it helps you to grow further. And if law becomes an impediment, it makes you fall flat, right? So till that tipping point, technology usually prefers to grow at its own pace and in an organic manner. And thereafter, it may need that leg up from law. And I am an optimist. I believe that law can actually provide that. Does India have laws to that effect? Coming to your last part of your question, yes and no. As with every jurisdiction and for every technology that you can think of. As I told you, some governments do prefer to wait and watch because that is the organic phase of a growth which you do not want to impede even inadvertently. But as growth happens and you identify pain points or issues or concerns, and then you decide, okay, I need to step in. And when it comes to technology, this is where a critical phase is also reached, because you also have to decide what is it that you can interfere in or engage with, and to the extent that you're able to enforce it. A law which cannot be enforced is not going to be passed, and it should not be passed too. So that's where, just let me complete the proposition, I'm not going to take long on that. So that's where India is poised. We have the AI regulations that's come in. We don't have an AI law the way you see in the EU. We have the Data Protection Act, which has been notified but not yet implemented, and we have a very long road still ahead of us till May 2027 before it comes into play. And if you ask me, are these enough and is it going to be effective? I would say certainly not. It's not enough, not even our criminal laws. But we have started somewhere, and we hope that we will land safely eventually.
Well, thank you. And I'll just add to this is, in my experience and what I'm reading, and maybe reading something with ChatGPT, but law or regulations is always lagging so much behind the innovation pace that we are in right now. And the innovation pace is also dictated by the market, what the market needs, right? It's been, 3 years and 2 months till ChatGPT was even announced. And look at it, everyone uses Gen AI for a lot of things. But thank you. And one of the things that I'm going to bring Maya in is, like, we talked about, hey, this is what India is working towards, we'll have regulations. But in your experience, we can learn from others, right? You have great experience in global diplomacy. So few things, right? One is, where do we look for to learn to make ourselves better in terms of our laws, regulations, and whatnot? And what are the key global benchmarks? So one is looking at the specific jurisdictions and laws, and then what are the benchmarks we should be thinking about as well?
Thank you so much for the question. Again, I think it's such a timely topic. And Gaurav was briefly saying that, again, the Indian who cannot avoid this topic because of the size of the population. I'll be glad to say this is a wicked problem. It's relevant for all countries. No country should either neglect it at this point. I think that, you were just mentioning about that what India can learn from others. All countries need to learn from each other in terms of the learnings, in terms of the harms and obstacles. I would say from the Israeli perspective, we are quite known for our technology, I would say, the deep tech technologies, startup ecosystem. We have some of the most brilliant technology in the world. I would say also, again, I've been living in India, I would say that especially in this domain, there is fantastic work being done over here. I feel that in many ways the problem is still in the delivery. Meaning we're still seeing this kind of gaps even when we have very strong technology in this space. And I think that, we were just asking about benchmarks. There are different benchmarks, but in many ways, when AI is integrated, we're speaking all of a sudden about scenarios. We are trying to take a much more nuanced approach to child safety. So if in the past we had certain benchmarks on how we should look at child safety, what kind of platforms we should moderate, today with AI, it's almost paradoxical. We know that AI is harmful. We know the level of content moderation, the potential harms. But in the same time, we're also trying to increase the AI dispersion. So what I would say in many ways that I feel that benchmarks are needed, but when we're speaking about AI in addition to child safety, trying to understand how they can both be combined, we need to think much more about tackling certain scenarios. What we've been doing, which has been quite successful in our case, was to have this kind of multi-stakeholder centers connecting our government to police centers to companies. One of them, it's called Center 105. It's actually a collaboration of our police unit with some of our strong companies and the government. The entire point is to create fast cycles of action. And I'm saying this because this is not something that will be dictated by a benchmark. It's out of a certain void. Benchmarks are here to guide, and I think especially in the AI, I think we've seen different benchmarks, guidelines, also in child safety space. And perhaps I'm saying this as an ethicist, so I'm here to look for the exceptions in a way. And I completely agree with, as brightly said, law that cannot be enforced should not be enacted. The thing is, some laws will not be fully enforced because of the current situation. I think that's exactly the place here, that we need to think a bit beyond the benchmarks. We need to see how we're taking specific scenarios and bringing them the right stakeholders. And I think that in this case, what I hope we'll be able to reach is perhaps either more nuanced benchmarks to see how we can tackle certain scenarios in child safety in which AI can tackle certain parts of it, but as also said by the other speakers, we are aware of the limitations. We know that AI, in the end, yes, it's pervasive. It has its limitations. But in many ways, I feel that the way going forward will be much more nuanced and scenario-based approach so that we're able to think slightly better on how can we make sure that this benchmark are actually fulfilled? How can we make sure that we're going a bit beyond global benchmarks and legislation that can protect in times of need?
It's very nuanced as well because when we talk about threats and there's a generic way of lens of thinking about threats against or harms against children, but then it sometimes also get nuanced in the local cultural slangs as well, right? Same thing could be appropriate here. Like, I hope it's not the case, but it is, right? So I'm going to bring the academic point of view here, Ms. Charu. Just quickly before I go to the operational aspects, what are your thoughts in terms of the intersection of, we talked about builders, enforcers or legal, and how are you preparing as an academic the next generation of both the enforcers, the policymakers, as well as the users? We are not talking about kids here, but at least the kids that are, the students that are going through the learnings now will eventually start taking and making those decisions.
Wonderful question, thanks. Thanks to Manishji and IGPP also. So as an academics, I would just take Gaurav's submission a step further. So he moved from safety to well-being. But I think what we need to now look at is the rights approach. That we should focus on rights by design, a right of a child to be having no discrimination, a right of the child to not be abused or privacy not being exploited, etc. So once I have a rights approach in these systems, and I think Chitra was also noting, is we should have CRIA. in terms of child rights impact assessment audits should be very necessarily implemented by all the tech designers and service providers. Apart from that, I would also advocate a whole of society approach in this, where yes, I'm so glad you take children on board, you ask them, etc. But I think there are more stakeholders than that. There are not just tech platforms, parents, guardians, children, but there are also doctors, there are also mental therapists, counselors. There are also other alternative arrangements which we should look into, and this is trying to give them an alternative digital mentor, which none of these building blocks have so far considered. But let us remember that if a movie like Her, somebody can fall in love with an AI, even a child is capable of falling in love with AI, because it's giving you prompts which are so easy, it's like putting an echo chamber around what a child wants to hear, because that's what algorithmic bias is. So when I went through UNICEF guidelines, I went through Brookings Institute's guidelines, Alan Turing Institute's guidelines, OECD guidelines. So framework which I came out was that there should also be a black box to open class approach, where, like somebody here mentioned, that not just the parents but even the teachers have an access to what the child is looking without intruding into their privacy. Yes, digital mentors as advocated by OECD is very, very important. And please, neuroplasticity gap has to be bridged, because the child is always looking for easier affirmation which AI gives them. So there should be some frictional reward system in educational AI. That means don't just applaud them right away, but give them this chance of having cognitive development, that look, you have to go through this. Last but not the least, what is very, very important for us is that the duty of care is also part of right. So duty of care by snaps and legos of the world is an important part. It's not in favor, it's a prerequisite. Thank you.
No, thank you. This is amazing because, again, the friction by design sorry needs to be built in. But the thing is that we all think that there is a friction between creators like Lego and Snap and the regulators. But I think Ms. Napanai actually was very specific that, hey, we should not think of as a friction. But what is super important is we talked about, hey, builders, but let's actually hear from our friend Akash in terms of operationalizing this whole thing, right? So a few things there. One is, what is the real situation here, right? And one of the things I want you to focus on, especially in the context of India, where there's so much cultural differences, language differences, how do you operationalize at scale of India?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and great to be here. I think AI has been there for the last, I'd say, 10, 12, 15 years, since the time social media started, right? Yes, generative AI is new technology. I'll talk about 3 or 4 things that are there, and then I'll touch upon the India question, India-specific bit. The first thing is, if you look at the harms that are happening, it's not happening. It's all happening online, right? So there are no boundaries online. There are no, you cannot have a law in India protect someone in the US and vice versa, right? The laws are extremely varied. They're not consistent. So it's not the lack of law not being there that harms are happening. It's the inconsistent enforcement that is happening why the harms are happening. And again, you touched upon it. I think the panels also touched upon it. AI is progressing really, really fast, right? So it's not about the gravity of the harm anymore. It's also the instances of the harm that are happening. So in a click of a button, now you can generate synthetic media, which is in millions of pieces, right? That is where law enforcement, we work with a lot of platforms, and we work with a lot of regulatory authorities, and we realize that the challenge that is there is how you look at these synthetic data points that are coming out. Are they real, not real, etc., right? So there are challenges. And then the last point that I'll make is the differences between each market and each language. So I know you spoke about India, but we work across global clients. So we have people across the world who help with AI safety, and AI training. But that is where I think regulators, policymakers, academicians, governments need to come together to say what are the type of harms that are happening, because the harms move from one place to another place. It happens. From an India standpoint, you rightly pointed out, like we have so many languages, we have shared devices, we have different levels of digital literacy that is happening. And with all of that, you also have the generation just on mobile phones directly. When we were growing up, we didn't have any mobiles, we didn't even have internet. So that's different, completely different. There are a lot of challenges that are there. I think the issue that all the platforms end up looking at is they have to manage engagement, they have to manage monetization, and they have to manage safety. They have to manage all three in equal regard.
I agree. And one of the things that I'll tell you, when we talk about AI, it's not a recent phenomenon. The first set of AI thinking actually started back in 1960 when some academics actually thought about what they call symbolic AI, where you actually map the world and it would always be deterministic. But thanks to Jeffrey Hilton and deep neural networks, now we talk about probabilistic things as AI, which shouldn't be. But anyway, so one thing that I do want to actually close out with is very, very specific one thing, right? We have to be very quick because we already have Oscar music played behind us a few minutes back. So if one non-negotiable safeguard that India should implement, we'll start from you and we'll come here. One non-negotiable, quick.
I think there should be identity marks in all the AI-generated content so that a child knows this is a robotic thing on the other end and not a human being. That's very important.
From Snap's perspective, the one thing that India needs is an age-appropriate design code. I think that we have a bunch of specific provisions in other laws on data protection and the IT rules, which is a horizontal law. What we don't have as a country is a statute that is exclusively and in a granular way focused on children's online safety. We need that.
Yeah. I would say faster reaction cycles through, again, multi-stakeholder approach, making sure that companies or startups are also part of the preventive measures as well. I think, again, it's key in India, it's also key in other places. And I think that this is something that India should still fight for, and I think definitely perhaps one of the most pioneering countries, and it's the linguistic diversity in design. The fact that you're able today to translate to all Indian languages. This is, I feel, a benchmark for many other countries. Not everyone is putting so much effort. We're a very small country, we don't have so many languages, and still I feel that India is definitely bearing the torch when it comes to linguistic diversity in the space, and it's crucial.
Zero tolerance for profiling of children. And I think it's really critical for us to understand and know and distinguish profiling from processing, and understanding where processing for good stops and processing for good of commercial activity starts, and know where to pause that.
I would say that if the tools are not, if we don't feel the tools are safe enough, they shouldn't be in the hands of kids. So I think I would say we should just legislate against that. If it's not safe enough, it shouldn't be used. But outside of that, I would say education, like obviously our work is with kids, but all the way up to grown-ups, to teachers, to parents. I think they need to understand this wave that's coming over them. They need to understand it in a meaningful way. And I think we need to get nuanced about AI literacy. AI literacy is not how kids or adults use tools. It's understanding how they actually operate. And I think that's a little different to just, we know how to use ChatGPT in a safe-ish way. They need to understand it a little bit more, with a bit more nuance than that.
I think I have a controversial one. So no targeted behavioral advertising for minors.
How would we survive in this no advertising world? I don't even know. Even ChatGPT is playing with some ads. But anyway, so one of the things I think you're absolutely right? Is literacy is very interesting word here, right? Media literacy, especially whenever we talk about literacy, not just the users, but the the users around the user, right? Meaning educators, parents, do they understand how it works? And I've been told that we have time actually, because the next panel is running late, which is an amazing thing for the audience, because what I'm going to do is, my role is done. I'll have the audience actually will take like 3 questions. Raise your hands. All right, we'll start there, second and third. All right, we have.
Yes, well, ma'am, the way you mentioned about the regulatory mechanism, that plays a very important role. That alone can bring awareness. Once the awareness is brought, children will automatically understand what to see, what not to see, and the safety measures will be also taken point. And at the same time, the legal and administrative procedures will be one of the most important issues, and regulatory mechanism will be nuanced in the form of benchmark, as you mentioned. I think that is one of the most important point, and we need to understand the most of the regulatory aspect and the most part of the most legal part of it depends on administrative awareness. It is awareness, the education the child should receive, and then the safety and etc. will come automatically. That is intrinsic in nature, not extrinsic.
Yeah.
That's what is my big point.
Many laws now, if
Yes.
you notice,
Yes.
they are bringing in awareness
Yes.
also as a critical
That's right.
requirement
Yes.
that stakeholders have to engage in compulsory.
Yes, and the same point was mentioned by ma'am also, and she mentioned it in a very beautiful manner. That was very
Thank you.
enthusiastic.
So, good question. We'll go back to this lady here. Sorry. One and then.
Hi, I'm Pallavi. I'm from Ikigai Law. We're a law and technology public policy firm. My question is to Uttara. Yes, you alluded to this, but I would actually love to understand how this works in practice. So when you're thinking about the architecture of an AI-enabled feature or bot, how do you balance the requirement for safety versus the child's privacy? So for instance, for prompts for, let's say, self-harm, what do you think about, let's say, alerting the parent, or let's say a school if that's involved?
Can you hear me? Yeah, that's great. But thanks for that question. I think it's a really good one. In fact, I wish it was part of the panel as well. So on Snapchat, we have an AI bot called My AI. Okay, it is a conversational AI that speaks with primarily young people. So as you can imagine, very much topical for this particular panel, right? So when we built My AI, we again took this safety by design approach to its construction, and we did that end to end. Okay, oops, sorry. I'm just gonna.
It's not me, I tell you.
I know. Okay,
I did.
fine.
No.
It's
not.
the universe. That's fine. So let me just take you through the process, right, in terms of safeguards while building My AI. It's not something we just retrofit into the app. We have to. Non-good faith questions of the AI. You know, like a strange question about sexuality that's age inappropriate, or a question that's harmful, or about bullying, etc. The AI will pause communication with that particular person. That's again a built-in safeguard, right? And number 4, essentially on Family Center, a parent is able to cut off My AI for their team. Right? So really, the TLDR, Pallavi, is that we ensure that the AI is aware of who it's speaking with, Number two, we try to ensure that its responses are generally age appropriate. And number three, we're giving multiple mechanisms for it to cut off communication or stop when to speak with a young person depending on what's being detected. I hope that answers your question.
That's helpful. Thank you.
That's amazing. We'll have one more question, and there's a gentleman there, and this is it. We'll play the Oscar music, I promise. This is it.
Okay. I get to grab her?
We're vouching for her.
Okay.
Never mind. We were all rooting for her.
Yeah, she was there. Yeah, we'll give it to her. Yeah, she wins.
It's a female Lovely, by the way. I'm intrigued with the way the seating goes.
Last one. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir. My question is to Ms. Chitra and Advocate Napinai. Ma'am, I work with children in communities as well in school, where we are working on school safeguarding framework and models. So whenever we receive SOS calls from schools when it is related to digital safety, it is usually that their classmates are either bullying or sexually harassing or assaulting them with deepfake photos or videos. They are even chatting on all sorts of platforms, but yet that age restriction is not there from any platform, any space. Now, once this offense has been committed, obviously the school, the parent are in panic and they are reporting it to the police. But yet under the POCSO Act or the IT Act, that takes time. You know, the way the cybersecurity division engages is rather slow, even though it's a POCSO case. Now, because it's a child sexual abuse matter. Now, in such instances, how can school prevent such acts? Because in schools, children are allowed to bring devices in whatever capacity they are allowed to bring devices. Now the harm has been done. So what can the schools do next? Thank you.
See, thank you for this question, but it's very close to my heart. There are two things I've been emphasizing. The first is to keep children safe, but the second part is keeping children or others safe from children too. Because often we forget that children can cause a lot of harm. So it's important for them to know the difference between a prank or a joke and a crime. Often they don't know the difference. Secondly, they have to know that merely because they are minors, they are not out of law's, purview. There is a law for them, the Juvenile Justice Act, and what does it entail and what harm can come to the child who violates the law. That awareness is also critical. So in my Sassy Tales book, the second one, this is what I emphasize, saying that you need to know when the line is drawn and you should not cross it. And secondly, God forbid, if you cross it, then what happens? The good thing with the intermediary guidelines that have come out now, incidentally, and I'm jumping to the remedial aspect of it, is that even earlier, you had a 24-hour timeline as opposed to 15 days for takedown of content which has nudity. That I can tell you how to make it work. I am also a skeptic as much as I am an optimist. So we are realists rather. We know how the law works and where it may fail. But it is in each of our hands to make it work. So I'm not saying the system is great, but I'm just saying please make it work for you. And this is how you do it, okay? You have an online platform, cybercrime.gov.in. It works very slowly. It will take 48 hours or more because there is a system or process it goes through. You have a 1930, which is also pretty slow because it will take you back to cybercrime.gov.in. If you want speedy takedowns, and today the 24 hours stands reduced to 2 hours for that category, go to a police station, sit there and make the system work for you. Take my word for it. I've done it. It works.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'll give the gentleman last question.
Thank you. Okay, so the question that I had is, there were several ideas that were floated by Ms. Chitra and Ms. Nipanya and so on. The challenge that I see is that with every passing day, the pace is picking up, the spread is growing. The old ways of coordination, like these panels in an episodic way, doesn't, in my opinion, is not going to cut it. So the question to the panel is, are there new mechanisms that need to be evolved in order to accomplish global coordination of responses?
I'm sorry, I'll chip in very quickly on this. There is already global action on this. Recently, the UNODC spearheaded UN Convention on Cybercrime has already been approved by UNGA. India is not yet a signatory, but that pertains to only 10 substantive criminal provisions. What is critical about this Cybercrime Convention is it predominantly focuses on global cooperation from the stage of collection of data to investigation and even trial of cases. So the whole idea is cybercrime is borderless. So now let's figure out how enforcement can also be made borderless.
I'll just add some promising signs, not directly in AI. You're seeing countries like Australia and Spain banning 16-year-olds and below with mobile phones. I think we can see, again, I started by saying nothing is inevitable as well. And I think it's, and when we talk about kids interacting with AI chatbots, I would be very critical. I mean, when you look at these companies, how many of their own kids would be using these chatbots themselves? So I think we should really look at it with a critical eye and go like, now governments are taking a sledgehammer approach because, as you said, it's not working and it's the pace. It's outpacing the ability to legislate. So I think we need to look at some bigger picture sort of ways to tackle this as well.
Uttara?
I want to take the opportunity of your question to respond to something the EEG recommendation sort of alluded to, right? And this is on using tech, the payments sort of analogy to children's online safety. To my mind, and this is early thoughts, right? My visceral reaction to that is that children's online harms are not a transaction between one account and another account, right? It is inherently about behavioral, relational harms occurring in the real world. And therefore, in my opinion, infinitely more complex. That interaction between platforms and the real world, right? And therefore, actually, I think the question the gentleman asked is profound. I think that we're going to be dealing with a landscape of complex and an order of complexity that's difficult for us to work with, which is why I think it's important for us to have laws that are almost entirely focused on children's online safety as an exclusive subject matter, as opposed to using horizontal legislation on online content or privacy to tackle something as complex as this.
No, this is an amazing way to end this, which is children's well-being is not a transactional thing, right? So I'm gonna. Hello. Sorry, Chara. Let's end it. Why don't we do this?
In Indian context.
Okay, yeah, just quickly.
So Indian context, DPDP Act has come, which says if you don't give your details, you'll be penalized 10,000, which is very bad for children's safety because it's leading to what is called as digital gerrymandering. Those who apply for scholarship are actually kept on the wrong side of digital divide. They are treated as marginalized and outliers, which I think is a byproduct. Thank you.
Yeah, again, even a better point to end. Sorry, let's close this. Thank you very much. I learned a lot, so thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, all the panelists. I would request you all before leaving to just be here for the group photograph. And I'll also invite Chitra ma'am and Ms. Zoe. Please come and join us for the photograph. I think Gaurav Agarwal is not here.
Yeah, another one.
Yes. So, and meanwhile, I would like to thank you, IGPP team, for making this happen, and Ashish sir for being very good moderator. And at the same time, partners who had joined us for this panel discussion, Child Light, iSpread, and Space to Grow. And we would be sending out memento in a while to our guests because we are getting ready with it. I'm so sorry. So I would request our audience to be here for the next session that we are going to host. It is on AI-powered ports. Thank you.